Nobody warned her. Not about the cameras, not about the industry, not about what it actually costs a 15-year-old girl to become famous overnight on one of the most controversial sitcoms in television history. Christina Applegate walked onto that set in 1987 with talent and almost nothing else to protect her. And what happened next, what really happened away from the scripts and the studio lights, stayed private for 37 years. Until now. Married with Children was not gentle territory for anyone, let alone a teenager. The show was built on provocation, and the character of Kelly Bundy sat right at the center of that provocation, written deliberately as a teenage sex symbol, dressed for maximum audience reaction, surrounded by jokes that left very little to the imagination. For a young actress navigating adolescence and sudden celebrity at the same time, the environment could have gone sideways in ways that nobody would have acknowledged or corrected, that it did not come down almost entirely to one person making a quiet, consistent, unrequired decision to care. Ed O'Neill was 41 years old when the show began. Theater had trained him, and years inside the entertainment industry had given him a clear picture of what it could do to people who had no one watching their back. When he looked at Christina on that set, he did not see a co-star whose scenes he needed to hit his marks for. He recognized a teenager standing in the middle of something she was not yet equipped to handle alone, and from that point forward, he made himself the person who handled it with her. No contract required it. No producer assigned him the role. The decision belonged entirely to him, and he made it without announcement or acknowledgement, which is the only way decisions like that actually mean anything. The way he operated was never theatrical. Crew members who spent years on that production noticed the pattern without being instructed to notice it. Conversations drifting into territory inappropriate for someone Christina's age got quietly redirected before they developed. During difficult scenes, Ed positioned himself nearby, not hovering, not making a scene of it, just present in a way that communicated clearly that someone was paying attention. Between takes, he checked on her. When shoots ran late into the night, he made sure she had a safe way home. He called her mother. He let a parent know that her daughter was being looked after on a set that could have been a much harder place than it turned out to be. Producers who pushed toward situations that made Christina uncomfortable found Ed pushing back. That happened without drama, which is precisely why it worked. The standard he set for how Christina was to be treated became the standard for the production, and it held across 11 seasons and hundreds of episodes. None of that showed up on screen. It was just the reality of what the set was, shaped entirely by one man deciding what kind of environment he was willing to work in. His theater background had given him on-camera instincts that most performers only approximate, and rather than keeping those instincts to himself, he used them to train Christina. Between takes, he would throw unexpected line deliveries at her, changing his rhythm to force her to respond authentically rather than from memory. He altered his approach mid-scene without warning her, watching how she adjusted, building her capacity to find the truth of a moment, even when it wasn't going where she expected. These were structured lessons delivered informally across years of shared work, and the craft she developed during that period owed a great deal to a teacher who never once called himself one. 1989 brought the first serious threat to everything they had built. Terry Racolta, a woman from Michigan, watched an episode called Her Cups Runneth Over and responded not with a changed channel, but with a campaign. She contacted major advertisers directly, made national media appearances, and her campaign produced results almost immediately. Coca-Cola withdrew their advertising support. McDonald's followed. Dozens of other companies pulled out in succession, and the network found itself in emergency sessions with cancellation sitting openly on the table. For Christina, who was 17 years old and for whom this show represented the entirety of her professional world, the uncertainty was the kind that can undo a person before they've developed the tools to handle it. Ed gathered the younger cast members and talked to them plainly. He sat with Christina and David Faustino, who played her brother Bud, and told them they had already created something worth being proud of, and that their value as performers existed entirely independent of what any corporation decided to do with its advertising budget. He also went to the press himself, giving interviews that defended the show, and made sure the young people in the cast were represented in the public conversation rather than left to absorb the cultural attack without anyone speaking on their behalf. What nobody anticipated was the direction the story turned. The national media attention generated by the boycott made millions of viewers curious about a show they had never watched, and curiosity translated directly into ratings. Audience numbers went up substantially during the period that was supposed to represent the show's destruction. Married with Children not only survived the campaign, but emerged from it more widely watched than ever before. What Christina has said she carries from that period, though, has nothing to do with the ratings recovery. What stayed with her was watching Ed O'Neill hold steady while everything else was shaking, and understanding for the first time what composure under genuine pressure actually looked like in practice. When Married with Children ended in 1997, it ended without ceremony. There was no finale designed to provide closure, no acknowledgement of what 11 seasons had meant or what it had cost the people who made them. One week the production existed, and the following week it did not. Christina was 26 years old. She had arrived at 15. The entire period during which a person builds their foundational understanding of who they are had taken place on that set, surrounded by those people, and now that context was simply gone. What she has been clear about is that the end of the show did not end the connection with Ed. Phone calls continued. Meals happened. Meals. Ed stayed interested in her career in the active way of someone who had watched it begin from its first moment. He offered perspective when she wanted it and made his presence available even when she had not asked for it, which is the version of support that actually means something, because it doesn't require the other person to ask first. Christina's career after the show built itself on her own terms. Film work, including The Sweetest Thing and Anchorman. Television roles in Samantha Who and then Dead to Me, which earned her some of the best reviews of her entire career. Awards and critical recognition that owed nothing to anyone's patronage. Ed O'Neill watched all of it with the satisfaction that belongs specifically to people who believed in someone early and then got to see that belief confirmed repeatedly without ever needing credit for it. His own career reached places that even his most enthusiastic supporters might not have projected. Modern Family gave him a second iconic role in American sitcom television. Awards followed, recognition followed, and yet in interviews across those years, the moments he returned to most consistently were not the achievements. They were the moments of watching Christina grow from the teenager he had met on a chaotic set in 1987 into the woman she became. August 10, 2021, changed the terms of everything. Christina posted to social media that she had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a chronic disease of the central nervous system that carries no cure. The diagnosis had come months earlier, discovered during the filming of Dead to Me's final season, and she had carried it privately before deciding to tell the world. Multiple sclerosis reshapes daily life in ways that accumulate and never fully stop accumulating. Christina now uses a cane to walk. She has spoken directly about cognitive fog that makes certain tasks harder than they used to be, and about the specific and difficult process of grieving a version of yourself while still being alive in the body that version used to occupy. Ed O'Neill's response reflected every quality that had defined his relationship with Christina since she was 15. He reached out with the kind of presence that goes beyond a message of sympathy, making sure she understood that his care for her was not contingent on her circumstances. The full Married with Children cast rallied around her. Katie Sagal, David Faustino, Amanda Bierce. All of them made their love visible and consistent. But it was Ed's response that Christina identified as the one that landed deepest. 34 years after he had first decided to look after a teenager on a difficult set, he was still doing exactly that. The diagnosis also reframed the reunion conversation that had been running as background noise for years. After August 2021, the question became whether a reunion could be built around Christina's needs rather than around the standard demands of television production. The answer from the cast was unanimous. Any reunion would be designed with Christina at the center. They had no interest in revisiting the Bundy family without Kelly Bundy, and they were not willing to pretend otherwise. That position gave Christina something during a genuinely dark period that cannot be manufactured. Confirmation that the relationships built during her most formative years were structural, that they would hold weight when weight was placed on them. November 2022 brought her first major public appearance since the announcement. She was receiving a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and attending in person required a kind of resolve that most people are never called upon to demonstrate. Christina walked to that ceremony with her cane and stood at that podium and gave a speech that left almost no one in the crowd composed. She named her illness directly. She named the fear and uncertainty that had accompanied it. She named the people who had shown up when things became hard, and when her voice broke, she kept talking. 2 months later, at the Emmy Awards in January 2023, she walked onto the stage, and every person in that theater stood up. The ovation ran for nearly a full minute, showing no sign of stopping until it simply exhausted itself. Christina stood at the podium and absorbed it, visibly moved, and then she made a joke. She said the shaking from the applause was rattling her brain. The audience laughed through tears, which is the only appropriate response to something simultaneously heartbreaking and genuinely funny, and the moment captured everything essential about who she is. After the cameras stopped, the private moments of that evening reflected the decades of relationship built between Christina and the people who had been part of her story from the beginning. Ed O'Neill made sure she knew he was there. Quietly and directly, without performance or announcement, in exactly the way he had always done it since 1987. Christina's podcast, Missy, which she hosts alongside actress Jamie Lynn Sigler, who also lives with multiple sclerosis, created a platform shaped around her current reality rather than the demands of traditional production. Discussions with networks and streaming services about various reunion formats continue. Nothing has been announced, but the conversations are real, and the audience that has been waiting for 30 years has not lost interest. Ed O'Neill has made his position clear and has not wavered. His participation in any reunion is conditional on one thing only: Christina Applegate is part of it. The Bundy family without Kelly Bundy holds no interest for him, and that is not a negotiating stance. It is simply a reflection of what their relationship has been across nearly 4 decades, the kind of bond that does not perform loyalty when convenient and quietly withdraw when circumstances become complicated. What Christina Applegate has started to tell the world about these 37 years is not a story about television or celebrity. Those are the settings. The story itself is about something much older and much simpler. A mentor who became a father figure, a young actress who became like a daughter, and a bond built in the middle of one of the most watched sitcoms in American history that proved, across every kind of test that life could arrange, to be more real than anything the show itself ever produced. She arrived on that set at 15 years old, not knowing what she was walking into, and what she found there was a person who chose to be responsible for her well-being simply because he could see that she needed someone to be. That choice echoed through everything that came after it. It echoes still.